Guys, so today I have with me here a young man who is finally in Canada after 3 good visa refusals. Yes, you heard me right. 3 visa refusals. And he's here to share his story with us all so that we all learn from his experience. You want to stay through with me to the end, and I am sure you will definitely learn a thing or two from this young man's story. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Edwina. If today is your first time here, you are so welcome. Kindly join this lovely family by hitting the subscribe button. If you are a returning subscriber, I appreciate you coming back. Let's get started. We are so blessed to have with us here Stephen, who is currently a PhD candidate in nursing science at the University of Toronto, Canada. And Stephen, like I said before, had 3 visa refusals before he finally got through on his 4th application. So he's here to share his experience with us all. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Edwina, and thanks for having me on your show. And hello to everyone who will be listening to this recording through your channel.
First of all, we want to know whether Canada is your first travel outside Ghana. Have you traveled outside Ghana before this Canada journey?
Yes, so I did travel to the UK in 2017, London to be precise, where I went there on a student visa. And so coming to Canada wasn't the first time I left my home country.
Okay, so did you do your UK visa application by yourself?
Yes, I applied for the UK student visa. We call it Tier 4 student visa. And so I did that application myself.
Okay, and let's come to the Canada one. Did you do these visa applications by yourself?
Yes. The Canada study permit application, which is a student visa, I call it study permit. I did that application also myself, and at least based on my experiences with the UK student visa application, you know, that influenced me a lot in terms of how I approached the Canadian study permit application as well.
So can you share your experience with us? I mean, what was the reason IRCC refused your first visa application?
Yes, so in my first application, the IRCC cited 3 grounds for refusal. And one was, it all entailed the issue of not being satisfied that I would return to my home country at the end of my stay. And that was based on 3 reasons. One, that based on my personal asset and limited financial status. The other has to do with family ties in Canada and in my home country. And then the final one cited was limited employment opportunities in my home country. And so by way of simple explanation, what this meant was that for the first one about limited financial status and asset, I had talking about the fact that the officer is not convinced that I will be able to support myself whilst I'm here financially. The issue about family ties in Ghana or family ties in Canada has to do with the officer believing that either I have family ties in Canada here, and so at the end of my program, there is, you know, the incentive to remain, because where my family is, I would want to be there. I don't know why that was cited, because I didn't have family ties in Canada here. But I'm thinking that because in my CV, I did state that I volunteered for a Canadian organization that is working in Ghana. I don't know if that was taken to mean some kind of ties with Canada. And then on the issue of family ties in Ghana, that could also mean that, okay, either you don't have any family in Ghana, so when you come to Canada, there will not be a strong incentive to want to go back to your family. And the other issue about limited employment opportunities, again, it ties to economic opportunities. If they are limited in your country, then it is common that the student would want to stay in Canada. And so these were the basis for those refusals.
Okay, so Stephen's refusal were basically on three things: Canada, ties with Canada, proof of funds and his assets, and also limited employment opportunities in his home country. So those were the basic reasons why his first visa application was refused. So after your first refusal, how long did it take for you to put in a second application?
Yeah, I think it took approximately 2 weeks. After I received feedback that my application had been refused, it took 2 weeks for me to resubmit a new application. For me, because this was somewhere in September 2020 and the academic session has begun, so I was in a rush to, put in an application just to be able to arrive in Canada early enough. Although, given COVID, we had started coursework online. So when I was now applying for the second time, and I got to the proof of finance section, I realized that, okay, there was a lot of information that I had not probably taken notice of in my first application. For example, you are required to submit extra documents that will show that really you are able to support yourself as in Canada, just beyond the funding letter that I had received from the school. And that was because in my UK application, that was all that I needed to do. Admission letter, my scholarship letter. And so this time too, I thought probably the same thing. All that I needed to do was to show my admission letter, and then in terms of funding, the scholarship letter that I received from the school. But I realized that there was more I needed to do in terms of adding additional personal finance or bank statements to it.
So you did that in your second application?
Yes, in my second application. That was the new thing I did. I included those documents.
So if I get you right, you had a full scholarship from your school, and that was the only proof of funds document you attached to your first application?
Correct.
You didn't attach any personal bank statements or any other assets?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so I mean, we can all appreciate that his first refusal was a just refusal. Yes. So the second one, you added this bank statements, and
yes.
you still had a refusal?
Yeah, so in the second one, as I said, I added personal bank statement. But again, if you converted the amount that I attached to the Canadian dollars, you realize that still that wasn't something much, So yeah, that was the only thing I did differently by including that bank statement. And, I was thinking, this time, I will get it. And that was
so, I mean, after your first refusal and then your second refusal, why do you really think you had a second refusal?
Yeah, so again, if you look at the reasons for the second refusal, they were not very much different from the reasons cited in the first refusal. And that is, this time, the only new reason they added was the issue of, they said based on my travel history. So the officer says that he or she is not, or they are not convinced that satisfied that I will return to my home country at the end of my program based on this reason of travel history. And by that, it could mean that either you haven't traveled before, and maybe traveling outside your home country for the first time, you may not want to return.
But that was not your case.
That was not my case.
Okay.
It could also mean that you've traveled before and you did not stay within the limit of your visa. Maybe you overstayed, for instance.
Was that your case?
That wasn't the case for me as well. Yeah, I know. When I ended my study, I still had 3 months for my visa to expire. So I remember
in the UK?
rushing home to my home country and then returning for graduation. So I came back to the UK, stayed till graduation time. So I actually left the UK, I think a day or two to the expiration of my student visa. So I wasn't so sure where that issue was coming from. And then the other previous issues, two of them surfaced here in the second refusal, that is limited employment prospects in my home country and the issue of limited assets and financial status.
So after your second refusal, you went on to a third application?
Oh yes, I did. After my second refusal, I went on to my third application. This time, I did something slightly different. I think based on someone's suggestion, I enlisted the help of an agent to help with the application. And this time, we took a while, gathering additional relevant documents to support my application in terms of making the proof of finance aspect much stronger. The question of did I have land documents, did I have property, cars, and all that, all these things, could be evaluated and included as part of the proof of finance. And I believe it also did more to just show beyond the proof of finance. But at least if you have a lot of these things going on, then perhaps the assumption is that you have a lot going on in your home country, and so the motive to remain in Canada may be less. You would want to return.
Exactly.
I used the agent this time, and in 6 months' time, after I had received the second feedback, I submitted this third application.
And then another refusal.
Surprisingly.
Oh.
Yeah, surprisingly, a third refusal this time. And surprisingly...
Through it all, how was the feeling? I mean, generally, how did you feel? Because you went the first time, you were refused. Second time, you were refused. Third time, you enlisted an agent, and that was also refused. So how was the general feeling at the time?
Yeah, at the time, I was thinking I wasn't so sure what was happening, but I still maintained the hope that when the time was right, it would definitely happen. I was beginning to feel somehow frustrated, and the pressure was beginning to mount because around that time I had received a letter from the director of the PhD program indicating that they empathize with me, but because the program is not a distance program, the online coursework came in as a temporary measure because of COVID. But with a plan to return to in-person classroom, it is mandatory that I'm in Canada. I was in Canada at least by the winter of 2022. So that was when the pressure was beginning to mount, and with receiving that letter, and I was also beginning to entertain this idea of perhaps maybe I should consider applying to other countries as well, just in case that doesn't also in the end work out. Yeah, so those were some of the thoughts and the feelings at the time with the third visa refusal.
Why didn't you just give up?
As for giving up, it didn't come to mind because I always thought that, okay, once this one has been refused, I will get the next one. So that was for me. that was the mindset.
You thought every refusal took you a step further to you
yes,
getting.
yes.
Okay,
so I never thought of giving up.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's a very good one. I mean, who knows? If you had given up, you wouldn't have been here.
Indeed.
If you had given up, you wouldn't have been here. So your fourth application number 4.
Yes.
Did the agent still do this?
No, this time the agent wanted us to do it again, and I said it's okay. I'm going to just do it alone, and if it is God's will that I get it, I will get it. It's all right. I mean, we've done more. He has done what he could do, right? So I was just going to do it alone.
Okay.
And,
so I want you to tell us what you did differently in your fourth application. I mean, when you sit down and look at all your applications, what can you say categorically that you did in the fourth one that you did not do in the previous ones?
I think what constituted strengths in the fourth application included the fact that, one, I addressed the grounds for refusal one after the other. At least I took each one after the other, addressed it, and made a case for it as to why I think that I have met this requirement, and particularly on the financial status aspect. And at this time, the finances had also boosted up a bit because my first year funding at the university had remained untouched because I wasn't in Canada, and so that payment had remained untouched, and so that also boosted the finance aspect.
Okay, so let me bring this one in. Okay,
Yeah.
let me bring this one in quickly. You mentioned that you had full scholarship or funding from your university.
Yeah.
And that is the only thing you attached to your first application, right?
Yes.
At the time you were putting in your application, the basic living expenditure or proof of funds a student at the time should get was $10,000.
Correct.
So looking at your funding package, what the university was giving you, did you have enough to pay your tuition and the balance of the $10,000 for living expenditure? Did you have that much?
Yes. If you look at the scholarship package, after paying tuition fee, I had over $15,000 that would come to me to support my living cost. And so given the minimum living cost of 10,000 Canadian dollars as of then, it meant that I was good to go. And so now in this fourth application by this time, I had over 15,000 in Canada here waiting to be accessed once I arrived, and there's every year a similar or equivalent amount was going to come in. So I think that boosted the financial aspect of it.
So in your fourth application, you had that of your first year's funding and your second year's funding.
Yes.
So like 2 years funding.
Absolutely.
So the amount you had doubled in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also in this fourth application, included the letter that I had received from the school that had given me an ultimatum, so to speak, that I needed to be in Canada by the winter term, because of the in-person class that were going to take place. And so with that letter, because what the university has said in that letter was that if I didn't get that fourth application, then I had to drop out of the program and reapply. And so that letter was also attached and all
if
that.
You had not gotten your fourth, if your visa was refused for the fourth time,
I would have dropped out of the program.
Wow.
Yes.
And had to reapply all over again.
All over again. That was the.
That was a big one. How did you take that news?
Yeah, so that said, I was saying that the pressure was mounting at that time.
Yeah.
And that was also when the idea that maybe I should start looking into PhD programs in other countries as well, for example, the United States. And so, by God's grace, the fourth application came through. I believe some of the issues I raised in this fourth application made a difference, and it went on to strengthen my visa application.
So, what the difference in your fourth application was basically one, your proof of funds. You had a stronger proof of funds now because your first year funding and your second year funding all together, and then the letter your school sent you that if you are not there, they are going to withdraw your admission, and then
addressing each issue one after
you address the issues of the refusal.
Yeah, making
one
it
after
explicit,
the other.
making it explicit how I am meeting those grounds, the reasons for refusal, how I have met them. So, for example, I'll make it explicit that the minimum amount required for living in Canada for a year as of that time was 10,000. Here's the case: I have my first year funding remaining untouched, and the second year funding is coming in. So having over $30,000, dollars, that was enough. It far exceeded the minimum requirement, yeah. So
aside just giving the documents of your proof of funds, you actually stated was plain how the funds you had met the requirement for the visa application.
Now that you mention, I think that is an important issue. Usually it's not enough to just attach documents to the various aspects. So proof of funds, attach my bank statement, I attach this and that. It's usually, I think it's not enough. We are giving the visa officer so much work, but if you provide an additional document that explains that this one addressed this issue or this one is to fulfill this requirement, because there's a section in the application called client information, and you are at liberty to attach any other information that will support you. So it provides an opportunity for you to, in clear terms, explain, the way you have done certain things. And in that case, you kind of set yourself up for success. You don't give great opportunities for doubts.
What I'm getting from this is that don't just attach documents and assume that the visa or officer understands. Because you know that Canada, we do not go for you do not go for interview, so there is no opportunity to explain anything. So your documents and whatever you present should be comprehensive enough. Don't assume that the visa officer would understand. So whatever documents you send, it will be very necessary that you write something to show how the document is linked to the requirements of the visa application. And that is what you did in your fourth application, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Though I did do that in the third application, but I went back to look at that, how I responded to the issues, and it was like almost a 5-page document, so I needed to be succinct, summarize the key issues, and in that fourth application.
So you don't need to write 5 pages. That's not your thesis. Okay, the visa officer doesn't have that much time for a single person's application. So you need to be precise and straightforward to us in simple terms. Go straight to the point and be as precise as you can. Yeah.
Indeed. Good point.
Yeah. So after you had, your fourth application, instead of a refusal, you received an invitation for medicals.
Yes. So after submitting my fourth application, in 4 weeks' time, I received a message to go and do the medicals.
How did you feel like?
Yeah, that was beginning to feel that something positive, was beginning to happen.
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
Okay. So when you received this, I guess you took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, God."
A sign of relief. Absolutely.
A sign of relief, absolutely.
Yeah,
a sign of relief.
Yeah.
And you thought that, well, this Canada it's not as if Canada wasn't for me after all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when did you go and do the medicals?
Yeah. So as I said, I went to do the medicals 3 weeks after I submitted the fourth application. Yeah. So
3 weeks after you submitted, you had an invitation to do the medicals.
Yes.
Oh, that was quite fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So after the medicals, then your passport was requested for.
Yes. So after I did the medicals, it took additional 4 weeks for a request of my passport to be made.
Okay. And then after the request of your passport, how long? Did you get people get their visas in a week or two after their passports have been?
So when I submitted my passport, within 4 weeks, it was getting to 4 weeks, I hadn't received my passport back. So I was wondering what was happening, and what I did was to send a follow-up email to I think the Canada High Commission in Ghana, and so as a follow-up to know what was happening. And that was what happened. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to follow your timing.
Oh, okay.
So trying to follow it means at this point your winter term that the school gave you to be in school by then was due.
Yeah.
I'm looking at trying to follow your timing. The school gave you up to winter to be in school, or you risk losing your admission.
Absolutely.
And it's in winter now. Your passport had been requested for.
Yeah.
But you hadn't gotten it hadn't been returned.
Yeah.
What was the communication between you and the school at this point
so
in time?
first off in terms of communication, even with the visa office, because the deadline was fast approaching, because as of 29th, January, I had not received my passport back. And the school
And the winter term had already begun.
The winter time had already begun. The term has begun, and so that was why I emailed the visa office to find out what was happening, because the date the school gave to me to be in Canada was almost 4 days away. And so what was the issue? Also around this time, I was waiting for my passport to be returned to me. I had COVID-19 and I had to email the school to let them know. And so the school also understood that obviously in that state I couldn't travel, at least not within the next 2 weeks or so. And so however you look at it, that was also something that happened, and the school was accommodating or understanding in that regard. So when I reached out to the visa office about my passport delay, I think later I got information that one of the banks that I had submitted a bank statement from needed to reply to the visa office, and
they had not done that.
They had not done that. And so that gives you an idea that they do follow up on these things when you submit financial statement and all that. The visa office does follow up on some of these things, so that is something to note. So I subsequently had to call the bank to remind them, let them know that that's the information I'm getting, so if they can respond to that information the visa office was requesting for.
Okay, so I am still interested in the COVID bit.
Yeah.
So you had an extension from school because you told them you had COVID. You informed the school because the time they gave you was due. Your passport had been requested for, but it had not been returned to you.
Yeah.
And it was during that same time that you had COVID. So it's assumed that even if you had your passport back, you couldn't travel at the time. So your school understood that and gave you an extension. So had it not been for the COVID?
I still think the school would have understood that my passport has been submitted. All that was required was for the visa office to stamp it and return it to me. And so I don't think the school would have had any issue even with if had it not been the COVID.
Okay. So after you send your email, did they respond? I mean, do they respond to emails?
Yeah, it wasn't an email feedback that I got in return, but someone called me from the visa office about my query or my question that I was asking about the delay in my passport being issued back to me. And that was also when I got to know about the bank needing to furnish the visa office with some information. So a few days later, I received a call to come for my passport, and I went for it. And I think within 1 week, I traveled to Canada.
Wow, finally.
Indeed.
Yours wasn't a very easy journey. It was a tough one.
It was a tough one, and I think partly, as someone, as a Christian or a person of faith, sometimes some of these things happen, and we all have our individual ways of, dealing with them. And though personally, I feel I could have done much better in terms of the pitfalls that I needed to avoid. But all the same, for me, I knew that things were working together for my good eventually.
Everything was working together for your good.
Yeah.
Okay. So through it all, first, second, third, final, fourth application, getting a visa and all that, what lessons did you learn? And what will you tell somebody who is either yet to put in a first application or someone who might have gotten a first refusal and doesn't know whether to give up or put in another application?
Yeah. The first lesson is that never give up. just continue to do what you do. Sometimes you need to take a step back and reassess the reason why certain things went the way they went, and re-strategize. But as for giving up, that shouldn't be something to consider. Some of, I think, lessons or piece of advice I can offer would be that when it comes to applying for study permits, particularly to Canada, we need to read the visa application instructions carefully, and we shouldn't assume that the application process or processes are the same for other countries. As I said, in my case, my first application was influenced largely by my application experiences with the UK visa application, and so we have to read the instructions carefully, and then prepare, organize your documents properly. We do focus more on applying to the program. And once we get the admission, we do not put in the same energy, the same preparation when it comes to applying for the visa as well. So that is also one thing. So we have to plan and see how we are going to meet or put in a strong application, because your application is all that you have, particularly because we are not invited for interviews. Yeah, so
you don't
the application
have
is all that
chance
you
to
have.
explain anything.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to seek to provide complete, yet succinct information that fill the gap that can be the grounds for refusal.
I want to believe we've all learned from Stephen's experience, and experience is the best teacher, okay? But it doesn't always have to be your own experience. You can learn from other people's experience. So you don't need to experience it in person before you learn from it. That is why it's good for you to listen to other people's experience and learn from it, so you can avoid the mistakes they overlooked, okay? You have the opportunity to avoid the mistakes they overlooked. I hope you enjoyed Stephen's journey. I love his resilience. I love the fact that he did not give up, and he was still knowing that every visa application was taking him forward and getting him closer to his getting visa to come to Canada. And here he is. If he had given up, some of us give up after our second or third. If he had given up at that point, he wouldn't have been here. Okay, so sometimes no. You should also know if it is not for you, because sometimes it is just not for you and you have to look elsewhere. Okay, I am sure, I don't know if you would have put in an application after your fourth application.
I know.
I doubt.
Given the university's email that after the fourth application,
yes,
I would have to drop out of the program.
You should actually know when to say that this is not for me, let me let it go and focus on something else. But at least you need to try, not just the first time. You need to try a couple of times before you reach that conclusion, okay? So I hope we have all been encouraged and we have all taken a lesson from Stephen's story. Thank you so much for making time with us today. And you all heard Stephen is in a PhD program. Stephen is in a PhD in nursing science.
Yeah.
Stephen is doing a program in PhD program in nursing science. So I am going to bring him back to talk to nurses. I hope if I have nurses on this platform, please give me comments, okay? So that I bring him back to talk about issues that are peculiar to nurses. Let me know, and then I'll bring him back to talk to you guys. I'll give you nothing but the best. Thank you so much for your time, Stephen, and thank you so much for spending time with us. I believe that we'll all take a thing or two from his story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Adriana.
Bye.
Bye.